Hello, welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. This time I'm talking about The Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim, which I watched yesterday. This is the new animated film, a return for Middle-earth in animation, because you gotta remember, some people's introduction to Middle-earth was through animation. For me, it was the Rankin Bass The Hobbit anime film from 77. I watched that when I was really little in the 90s, and also had the VHS of the Ralph Bakshi 1978 The Lord of the Rings animated film. And it wasn't until maybe a few months before the live action Return of the King came out that I was able to rent the animated Return of the King, and it wasn't really as good as the others. So yeah, I'm a Tolkien and Tolkien adaptation fan. Loved the Lord of the Rings live action trilogy. The Hobbit trilogy, I was lower on. I'm not even sure that I've seen them since their initial release. Rings of Power, I've been enjoying. I think season two was a bit of an improvement over season one, even though I already enjoyed season one. But yeah, War for the Rohirrim, I was pretty hyped for this, and I went in, and I think I came out kind of thinking it was fine. So my rating for it would be a 7 out of 10. So I'll kind of go into vague-ish details, but basically where I would put it, I would definitely put it above the animated Return of the King, maybe above the live-action Hobbit trilogy, or at least most of it, but below Rings of Power and the Lord of the Rings live-action and 78 animated film. In terms of animated films rankings, I guess the Bakshi film would be like an 8 out of 10 for me. The Hobbit animation would be 7.5. So this would be below those, but above Return of the King, which is maybe closer to a 5 for me. It just has a bunch of structural problems, that one. But yeah, War of the Rohirrim, I like that it has this anime style. Um, and I'm trying to remember like which studio was attached to this. Um, Domain Entertainment. I remember seeing the logo for that. It was a little odd seeing that logo and maybe another one in front of this one, but yeah, you have Miranda Otto who put Eowyn narrating the story. Happy birthday to her. And this is almost 200 years before, I guess, before the War of the Ring. I could have sworn it said almost 200 years before Bilbo found the ring, but anyway, either way, it's a long while before The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Go back in time, you're in Rohan, and it stays within Rohan, which is pretty unique compared to some of the other stories that we've gotten on screen in this world. And, I've read the Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and there were changes here and there in the adaptations that I didn't like, and some changes that I understood and was on board with. But for other things like the Silmarillion and some of the other materials, outside of those, I guess you could call them the main narratives, the most iconic narratives. I've read Silmarillion front to back and some of those other materials here and there, but some of those tales that get brought up aren't as committed to memory for me as The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings books are. So the changes, if there are changes, from what I understand, this could be adaptation expansion of something that's mentioned. But some of the changes don't bother me if I'm not super, if I don't have a particular story super committed to memory, and I'm kind of open to some changes. So I was pretty much very open to this film. I didn't have a set of things that I need to happen. But yeah, I was in it for the ride, and we're introduced to Hera. I think it's pronounced that way. She is to be wedded to Wolf, who she's known since they were kids, and Wolf is connected to these people from Dunland, but she doesn't want to get married, and this pretty much causes the is the impetus for this conflict that happens between people. You know, the people of Rohan and the people of Dunland, and so you have these action sequences going on, and I gotta admit, some of the action I got a bit lost in. There were a couple points where it was a bit, I felt kind of out of it trying to track what was going on. But there were also a couple detours that I feel like maybe didn't really serve the main story that much. You know, like a confrontation between two beasts, or this side detour that is more connected to the wider lore, like the larger lore of the Lord of the Rings narrative, and it's like you could have just kept that out and just stuck to the main story. But I do appreciate how this film shows restraint when it comes to familiar faces. You know, uh, there's a particular someone that people have talked about, how they've had audio recordings of this person's lines that never got used in the other movies, and so they were able to use that here. And maybe I didn't read too deeply into it, but I kind of expected there'd be a bit more lines instead of just the one. But overall, I'm happy with how it was handled. You know, it's way better than how another recent movie handled something with a Lord of the Rings actor. I think y'all know the movie that I mean, but yeah, it's I guess in a way this is kind of the antithesis to the Hobbit films. You know, the Hobbit film trilogy, I should say. You know, they tell a complete story within just this one film, and it shows restraint with the familiar faces. You know, like in the Hobbit movies, you had Legolasing everywhere, and you just had to have him see a picture of Gimli, and it's like way too much of that sort of thing. But yeah, I thought this one felt more, it had more boundaries with that sort of thing, and was trying to stick to its main narrative. Now, I gotta admit, there were a few moments where I felt like some things were happening kind of easily for some of the characters. You know, there's an abduction moment that feels like it happens too easily, and it looks kind of awkward. There's a character jumps down from somewhere, and then later a character climbs up somewhere, and it's tough for me to buy into those because they're supposed to fit into the live action world that we've seen in the Peter Jackson films. You know, it's that same universe. Like, I know it's animation, but it, having that in mind, it kind of made it tough for me to buy some of that. Um, but yeah, overall, there were things I really liked. I feel like by the end, there were, I feel like maybe in the middle there was a little bit of a lull for me. Um, Also, Helm Hammerhand, I felt like he was maybe too strong looking, like unrealistically strong. Um, but yeah, I feel like there was maybe a little bit of a lull in the middle for me as things were kind of happening. But by the end, I really enjoyed the way that everything came together. There were some sneak attack moments that start to feel kind of repetitive to me, and how they were trying to surprise the audience so frequently. So yeah, I don't know. There are some things here and there that I wasn't as high on, but the narrative itself, just overall, and the dialogue that gets exchanged between the characters about like what it means to like have honor and all that sort of stuff, I really enjoyed that. So yeah, I think this movie was fine. You know, like I said, it's a 7 out of 10. The animation is pretty good. I would say if you really want more animated Middle Earth movies, then go see this film and show them that you are down to see animated Middle Earth stories. It's something that I'd be down to see more of. Even if it's, it could be this same style, or maybe they could try multiple different studios. You could have Aardman try a Hobbit focused movie. I think that'd be pretty cool, like claymation, stop motion, stuff like that. 3D animation. I know people are kind of touchy on that, but it would depend on the style and overall look. But yeah, I'm pretty open to more animated Middle Earth stories, even if this one was kind of just fine overall to me. Um, I hope that it does open the doors to more animation for this world. And yeah, I kind of feel like the marketing for this maybe isn't that strong, and that's why the box office isn't quite to the level of the Peter Jackson films. And, I don't think it's just because it's animation. I think it's because, it's not being marketed enough. Um, that's something that also happened with Transformers 1. They marketed it a bit, but it also didn't really convey the depth that that film had. And, I talk to people here and there, and they're surprised whenever I tell them there's a new Lord of the Rings animated movie. So that just goes to show you that I feel like they're not doing enough with the marketing. People are aware of Rings of Power maybe a bit more than of War of the Rohirrim. So yeah, if anything, I would say go and support this if you want more animation for Middle Earth. Even if you end up thinking that this is an average film, if you show your support, you could still, at the very least, show that you want more animated Middle Earth stories. But yeah, maybe that's not going to be for everyone. So it'll really depend on the type of viewer and fan that you are, I guess. But yeah, I'm glad that this exists. Could have been better, but I enjoyed the ride for what it was. And yeah, so that's pretty much my thoughts on War of the Rohirrim. Yeah, I watched it yesterday, and then when I got home, I marathoned the other anime films, did a rewatch, the Rankin Bass, The Hobbit, and Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, and then Rankin Bass, The Return of the King. So it was kind of a wild journey going through the different styles, but it was a fun ride overall trying that. But yeah, let me know what you thought of the film. And thanks for tuning in to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form. And I'll see you all soon.